Swamiji.
Ariyam, yeah.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the continuation of the discussion on the foundational texts of Indian philosophy. This meeting will be recorded and it will be posted on YouTube. So if you have missed any of the previous discussions, you may find it on YouTube. Also, if you have any questions, at the end of the session, there will be a Q&A session. Please use the raise hand feature of Zoom in order to maintain the queue. If you are not speaking, please mute yourself in order to minimize the disturbances. Thank you.
Recording in progress.
Om Sthapakaya cha dharmasya sarvadharmaswarupine avatara varisthaya Ramakrishnaya te namaha Sruti smriti purananam alayam karunalayam namami bhagavat padam shankaram lokashankaram. We are continuing our discussion on one of the primary preliminary introductory works to Advaita Vedanta. This is a book that normally students study before they they take up the study of Shankaracharya's own commentaries, because it gives a very comprehensive but preliminary ideas of Vedanta philosophy and Vedanta culture, the tradition of lineage, the qualifications of the teacher, the students, and how we should approach the subject of spiritual life. All these are included in this work. So in the last session I was talking about the 7 fundamental disciplines or qualifications or prerequisites for taking up Vedantic study. The first 4 one together can be called sadhana chatushtayam, which means 4 fundamental disciplines, qualifications. In Sanskrit, Shankaracharya elaborates this in this text itself. Ado nitya nitya vastu vivekaha, then ihamutra bharabhoga viragaha, samadhi, satka sambatti, mumukshutvam. First, we must have a sense of what is real, what is most relevant and most important in our life, and then we must uphold that fundamental value, and then we must give up our interest in unnecessary or irrelevant things. Then that will naturally will help us to develop a sense of renunciation, a great steadfast devotion to our chosen ideal, and an indifferent attitude towards things which are not necessary, which are somewhat insignificant in our life. And then again, actually this happens in our life when we have an ideal to follow. That gives us a sense of self-control, self-restraint. It helps us to conserve our energy. It also helps us to use our time properly. Our energy resources, our time, all can be used very intelligently, very economically, if we have a higher ideal to follow. So it is called samadhi satka sambatti. Self-restraint, sense-control, controlling one's mind, then endurance, forbearance, a sense of sanctity and sacredness, the ability to concentrate, inner peace and tranquility and contentment. And the 4th one is mumukshutva, means a strong urge for spiritual liberation or spiritual enlightenment. After these 4 qualifications, 3 additional important qualifications are necessary. We should not ever get away with the impression that we have to acquire all these qualifications one after another. It's not like that. See, if you are beginning to learn to drive, and if a driver tells you, if you are a small boy, if a driver tells you have to open the car, then you have to switch on the engine, then you have to do this, you may think it's a very elaborate process taking several hours. But in fact, it is only just a matter of half a minute or so actually of starting a car. Like that, in spiritual life also, if we develop one important quality, then all other qualities, all other disciplines automatically follow. This is an important thing. So philosophy is different from spiritual life. In actual spiritual life, even when you have a sense of higher ideal to follow, it will automatically give you the ability to give up your interest in unnecessary things and dedicate yourself for something higher. And that again actually disciplines our mind. It helps us to organize our energy and use our time properly. It reduces distraction and dissipation. So all these actually come together. Even if a person has got a strong desire for spiritual growth, that itself will automatically produce the other three qualifications. So we should not get away with the wrong notion that one should follow from, it's not a step-by-step process. It is an automatic, natural process. You can always remember what I said just now, driving a car. See, if somebody tells you that you have to, there are 3, 4, 5 things to do before you start a car. You open the car, you sit there in the seat and things like that. But a driver, professional driver, for him it is a matter of maybe 10 seconds, or maybe half a minute. So in real life, these things are natural. There is a spontaneity and naturalness in real life. But after these 4 are accomplished, 3 additional qualifications are mentioned, which are very important. One is Sravanam. Now if you look at the dictionary, whether Apte's dictionary, Moni Williams dictionary or any dictionary, you find Sravanam means listening to somebody or hearing. But here Sravanam means feeding our mind with a great idea, so to speak. It could be by reading, that is also Sravanam. But because actually when you read a word, you also hear it. That's why you are able to remember. What you don't hear, you will never be able to remember. So when you are silently reading a word or a sentence, you are actually hearing it. This is an important thing to remember. So that is Sravanam, means feeding our mind with a great idea. Of course, Itham Vakyehi Tadarthanusandhanam Sravanam Bhaved. As I mentioned, this Vidyaranya Swami was a great Vedantin who comes within Shankaracharya's lineage around 14th century, maybe a little earlier, BC. Jivan Mukti Viveka, Panchadeshi, some of his important books. So he says, Sravana means you hear or you get acquainted with a statement or a word, and then you follow, you contemplate, you follow that idea with meaning. Because when you hear a word or read a word with full meaning, you will remember. Next is Mananam, is contemplation, deeper contemplation. Sudasya Arthasya Upabhattibhihi Chintanam Mananam means when you read something, when you hear something, you understand the meaning, and then logically, using your own reasoning powers, you are analyzing the meaning and the essence and the sense of what we read. This is also important. The 7th qualification is Nididhyasanam, which actually means getting rid of all negative thought currents and getting established in a continuous, natural, spontaneous flow of positive thought current conducive to spiritual study. That means you are mentally, you are actually internalizing the whole thing. That's why Vijadiya Pratyaya Tiraskarena. Sajadiya Pratyaya Pravahikaranam Nididhyasanam. Two currents are going on within our mind. One is when we try to do something good and noble, a flow, like a river, a flow of negative and unfriendly, often contradictory or conflicting thought currents, one after another, will come facing us. This you should be able to reject. And in its place, we have to form a positive thought current. It means get internalization of what we contemplate on. So these are three important qualifications that come after sadhana chadushtayam. Now, this is very, very important. Why do we feel a kind of indifference, boredom, when we read a good book? For a person whose mind is not ready, you place before him the Bhagavad Gita, or let's say Dhammapada, or maybe the Sermon on the Mount, you keep. Our mind actually can pick up only what it is ready to pick up. And that's because our mind has its own constitution, samskaras, vasanas, what we call tendencies and impressions, thought currents, memory systems, which will not allow us to read what we want to read. We want to read the Gita, but our mind naturally goes to something totally different from it. Maybe something very unfriendly. Very often in this modern age of information explosion, it can be very dangerous also. Sometimes it is said, mind being fed with dirt and filth will try to accumulate more dirt and more filth. Whatever we have in our mind, it wants to get more and more. So, what we are ready for, that we normally try to accumulate. So, these are the 7 important qualifications. Now, after this, I shall take up what can be called the very heart of this book. You can see how relatively small but very important and very comprehensive Vedantic primer deals with the subject. Here, it's in the form of a dialogue between a teacher and his guru. Complete freedom, the total absence of enforcing any view, you should follow me or else, that is absolutely, totally absent in this book. So in the Gita itself, at the end of the text, Vimursya edad aseshena yathechasi tatha kuru. Lord Krishna makes a statement. He tells his student, I don't know if you can think of, other than Buddha and Shankaracharya, you cannot think of any other teacher who said this. Now look here, Sri Krishna is telling Arjuna, you listen to me. That's okay. Idide jnanamakhyadam guhyad guhyadaram maya vimursya edad aseshena yathesasi tatha kuru. I have taught you this great spiritual knowledge. Spiritual knowledge means secret, means very rare spiritual knowledge. Now, you analyze, try to think over what I taught you, analyze with your own reasoning power, and then whatever you are willing to accept, accept it. The rest you reject. This is the last instruction coming from Lord Krishna. After teaching everything, the teacher doesn't ask the student to blindly accept. But he says, use your own intelligence, your own power of wisdom, and try to understand and accept whatever you are ready to accept. Vimursya edad aseshena means, edad aseshena vimursya means, you, after completely analyzing, critically analyzing, vimursya means having critically analyze. That's the real meaning of immersion. So, after having critically analyzed what I taught you, you do whatever you feel like doing. Like that, here also in the Viveka Chudamani also, that is the approach of the teacher. So, if you have got the book, or later when you read the book, you may perhaps think of taking the 51st verse of this text. 51st. Remember, I mentioned earlier there could be one or two different versions. Some of these Viveka Chudamani printed works has got 579, sometimes 582, sometimes 584, because in some versions the invocations and the concluding verse prayer are also included as the main body of the text. But in this book which I am using here, it is 51st verse. So it is this simple. Ko nama bandha kadhamesha agataha kadham pradishtha asya kadham vimokshaha koso anatma paramakka atma tayor vivega kadhameda uchyadam. Now, these questions are put, I mean, the student puts before the teacher 7 questions. What are the questions? What is bondage? Ko nama bandha. What is bondage? What is bondage? One may think, what are you talking about bondage? So, living in this physical body, which as you know is a bundle of a skin bag of things which you won't like to touch and eat your food without washing with soap. If you touch any of the things that come out of the body, you will wash your hands. If you wash your hands before eating food. So this body is a skin bag. Body is great because this human body can be used for great purposes. You know, the great Einstein, Aristotle, Shankaracharya, Ramanuja, or Gandhi, Buddha, Vivekananda, Sri Ramakrishna, they also had the same kind of physical body that we have. And they are still remembered. So they also used this body. But they used this body, they did not identify themselves to be with this body. They could identify with something other than or beyond this body. So if you take the body as such, it is not a very pleasant place to live, to sit and to reside. So it is a bondage. And it comes, it grows, it changes, it falls sick, and it decays, and practically there is nothing so glorious about this body as such. The body itself becomes a vehicle, a tool, an instrument for a higher purpose. Kalidasa in the Kumara Sambhava, in the 5th Sarga, Sariramadhyam Khalu Dharma Sadhanam. I mean, so Mallinatha commentary, Mallinatha is a great commentator who wrote commentaries on Kalidasa's books. So in Kalidasa's Kumara Sambhava is one of the famous books. Many sarga, a 5th sarga, Shiva is trying to test his devotee, Uma, he says, Apikriyartham sulabham samitkusam jalani visnana vidhikshamanite apisvasaktya tapasi pravartase shariramadhyam khalu dharma sadhanam. It's a very famous verse. And this the statement is often used by Ayurvedic philosophers as something very important. The point is, Mukhyam sadhanam, this body is the most important instrument. That's the meaning of the statement. This body of ours is the most important instrument. So, the body is an important instrument if you use it properly. But to identify ourselves with this body alone, That is a terrible thing to do. That is a bondage. So, we are something that's much higher than this body. Body is only a residential structure in which something higher than the body resides, Atman. Then our purpose in life is to identify ourselves with that Atman, which is within this body, for which this body is only an instrument, an outer structure, an outer shell. So, being born itself with this strong obsession or idea that I am this body, that is a bondage. This world itself is a bondage. In fact, that is a primary fundamental principle of Buddhism also, dukkha. Pratitya samutpada, the 12-link chain. Trishna, desire, is the cause of embodiment, birth, and all the problems, all the Chattvari, Arya Satyani, all the griefs, all the imperfections of life. It's all because of obsession with body. So this is a bondage. We should get back to our real spiritual identity. So that's why, what is bondage? Ko nama bantha. First question. Second question is, katham esha agata. How this bondage came about? How did it arise? Then, katham pradishthasya. How does it continue to exist? And how do you get out of it? That is, katham vimokshaha. It is not getting out of the body physically. No. Death is not necessarily liberation. But there are many great men and women who have been in our past who were liberated while living within the body, while living with the body. They are called Jivan Mukta. Jivan Napi Mukta. You can be liberated. Even when you are in the San Francisco Market Street, as you know, that's Vivekananda's great statement is that you can see in our website. Swami Vivekananda said, standing in the streets, Market Street in San Francisco, can you keep your mind calm and quiet and contemplative? That is the real sign of liberation. That's the real sign of yoga. That is the highest spiritual experience. But it's something that we have to attain, and it's not just a concept or an idea that we want just to pretend to have achieved. It is something that takes maybe several life cycles for us to achieve. So here, liberation means katham vimoksha. Vimoksha means liberation. Liberation doesn't mean getting rid of the body. Liberation means getting rid of the body identity. So that's the idea. It is shariratma buddhi, mean the wrong notion that the body is the only thing that exists. What we call Atman is only this body. This wrong notion should be got rid of, and that is liberation. Koso anatma. And what is that which is distinct and different from Atman? Paramat Atma. What is Paramatman? What is supreme reality? Tayo viveka kathameta uchyata. Now, please explain, how to distinguish between this Atma and Anatma. How to distinguish between the real and the unreal. Please explain to me. So these 7 questions are put before the teacher. And the teacher unfolds the entire philosophy of Vedanta very, very logically, very elaborately. Now, I am just giving an introduction of this book. I have already given a number of lectures on this subject when I was going to Stanford as an in-person sessions at about before the COVID lockdown came. I was taking this class very elaborately in Stanford. So the archives you can get, and also you can get elsewhere. Now, I want to say something else about this. One of the uniqueness of this text is, I shall come back to the subject again. But one of the unique features of this text is very, very wonderful psychological insight into our mind. That's a very, if you, those of you can remember, later you can refer to this. The verse number could be 326. It could be 27 or 25 in some other versions of this same text. So that still you can verify. There's not much difference. Now, this verse tells us how we forget our true nature, how this bondage comes, how we identify ourselves with what is not Atman, and what prevents us from identifying ourselves with our true identity, Atman. There is a wonderful imagery. It gives you in full measure what we call deviation from our ideal, spiritual ideal. The verse is this: Lakshachudam ched yadi chittameshan bahirmukham sannipadet tatastataham pramadata prachuda kelikantukaham sopana pantu patito yatha tatha. There is one word used in this verse. Sopana pankti means a staircase. Imagine a staircase and a boy or a girl, little child, is playing with a ball. And somehow the ball falls down from his hand. The player, the boy, maybe the child is standing on the top step of the staircase. Somehow that ball falls down from his hands and falls right till it reaches the floor. So sopana pankto in this flight of steps, and bahirmukham sannibade tadastataha. Tadastataha means from one step to another step. The ball falls on the top step of the staircase. It doesn't stop there. Then it comes to the second, third, fourth, fifth. Even if the staircase had 25 steps, it won't stop till it reaches the top floor. Now, in modern times, suppose a student reads something that is absolutely undesirable in the internet, maybe in a movie or anywhere else, and gets attracted, gets misled, and does something. That person may end up in the prison, maybe in the lunatic asylum, maybe can turn out to be an alcoholic or drug addict. So where does it begin? But casually, accidentally, we just clicked one button in the computer or iPhone, to be more specific. It's more common thing. And it takes all the way, it may take 20 years, 30 years for that child to land in the prison or in the lunatic asylum 20 years later. What happens? A wrong idea is deposited in the mental system, and it doesn't stop with an idea. Slowly it gets consolidated, more and more undesirable tendencies and impressions, actions and habits are formed. As a result, our mind falls down one step, the first one step, then second, third, fourth, till it reaches the bottom, the ground, the floor of the staircase. Pramadada, by mistake, because of some delusional ideas. Prachuda keli kantukaha, just somebody who's playing with a ball, by mistake, it falls down, but it doesn't stop. till it reaches the floor. Now, this is the forceful, powerful imagery that is used. It's a warning to all of us. So it is not only a book on Vedanta philosophy. You can see this deep psychology of modern of spiritual life. We call this insight into the spiritual psychology of every spiritual seeker. You can think of a flight of steps, staircase, and a ball falling on the first step, the top floor. That is Lakshachudam. Somehow that ball, the child did not throw the ball. Accidentally, Lakshachudam, it just got distracted from its original goal. Lakshachudam means you try to hit a ball in one direction, but it got hit in another direction. And it falls on the top layer of the staircase, and it slowly comes down till it hits the rock bottom. This is the insight into the human mind and the deeper aspects of a spiritual psychology that you find in this text. At the same time, the highest spiritual truths are also explained. The highest Vedanta is also explained. See, I shall read another important verse. Taranga phena brahma budbudadi sarvam surupena jalam yatha tatha chideva devadeha mantametat sarvam chidevagarasam vishuddham. So, sarvam chideva. Everything is consciousness. Everything is Brahman or Atman. Ekarasam vishuddham. So, this is a very, you can see a very graphic description of higher philosophy you can find here. Now, think of the ocean, and then in the ocean there are waves, drops, and then movements of water falling up and down. Now, all these different manifestations of the water are the same water. Like that, this entire creation is nothing but Atman or consciousness, Brahman. Chideva ekarasam visuddham. Now, how do you reconcile this? If we can go beyond our body, mind, thought, emotions and feelings, intellect, everything, if we, in our spiritual journey through contemplation, if we can connect ourselves with our true identity, Atman, within, then we'll realize that everything in this world is Brahman only. Sarvam idam khalu Brahm. That means Sarvam khalu idam Brahma. This is a great statement in Vedanta. Sarvam khalu idam Brahma. Everything is Brahman only. For one who has reached this highest experience. Otherwise, we may think waves are different from the ocean because the ocean as such is calm and quiet. Waves are high, they go up, they fall down. Drops are there, foams are there. So different manifestations of the same water. So a child may think, well, waves are different from the ocean. Ocean is calm and quiet water, and waves are tall and high, and somebody go up and come down. But for a knowledgeable person, it is the same water that takes the form of the waves, the drops, and the whirlpools, all the same water. Now, this is the state of a person who has reached the highest spiritual realization. Sarvam khalu idam brahma. So you can see in this text, first of all, primary disciplines, and then also some very, very fundamental principles of Advaita Vedanta are clearly explained here. Now, I'm coming to another verse that actually gives us an insight into the approach of the order. How do we read a spiritual textbook, this fundamental text of Indian philosophy, that's a subject. How we should read a book, and how we should try to imbibe the ideas, and how we should try to reach the experience level of those ideas. This is found in one verse. It is maybe 282nd verse. The verse is simple. Srutya yuktya swanubhutya jnatva sarvatman atmanaha kvachid abhasada prapta swadhyaya panayam kuru. This idea behind. Now, first we must read a text, and then we must use our own reasoning power, and then by our realization we must try to remove all wrong notions and misunderstandings, and then we should reach the experience level. Sutya yuktya swanubhutya. This is a fundamental approach in Vedanta, in Hinduism, and this is a very, very rational approach. You can read a book, including this book, or all the Vedas you can read, or Bible, anything you read. But then, Vedanta textbooks do not tell you that they are going to give you a truth and you should listen, blindly accept, and should not ask any question. Vedanta doesn't tell you. That's why, yuktya, as Shankaracharya says. You read the book, Sudhi means, that I already mentioned at the beginning of the sessions. Sudhi means Vedantic textbooks. Read Vedantic textbooks, and then yuktya, by using our own power of reasoning. It's called uha poha vijakshanaka. In fact, this quality was mentioned as one of the fundamental characteristics of an ideal student. Medhavi purusho vidwan uha poha vijakshanaka. Uha means the ability to accept what is to be accepted. Rationally think, analyze, and then understand, and well, this is something which I should follow. And then there may be many things which you are not ready to follow. In that case, you should not worry about it. The apoha. So a great proficiency in reasoning, in deciding what is to be accepted and what is not to be accepted. This is an important skill for a very sincere, serious Vedantic student. That is Sutya Yuktya. Then Swanubhutya. That's another important thing. Vedantic texts tell you that you should read, you should use your reasoning power, but you should also reach the experience level of what you read and what you decide to accept. That's what turns you into a spiritual person. So, by this process of studying properly, with our understanding, and then contemplating on the meaning, and then internalizing, and then finally experiencing, for that we need to take up a series of spiritual practices. Some of the Vedantic textbooks in Vedantic tradition, they tell you that if you are ready to experience the truth, then even one statement from a teacher is enough for you to become a Jivan Mukta, a liberated soul. This is a very interesting, I think you don't find this higher ideas elsewhere. I can explain, I want to explain this. There are two fundamental schools in the post-Vedantic, post-Shankarite tradition, post-Shankarite times. Mostly, these two approaches, these two views were developed by Shankaracharya's disciples and also their disciples and other Vedantic scholars who came in that lineage. They are called Prasthana Traya, means. So they are called Vivarana Prasthana and Vartika Prasthana and Bhamadi Prasthana. I can explain this. First of all, we should know Shankaracharya wrote these commentaries, and these commentaries were later on further elaborated by a great scholar called Anandagiri. So most of Shankaracharya's Vedantic textbooks, especially Bhashyas, are further elaborated by or clearly explained by one great scholar. His name is Anandagiri, and he wrote a Tika. Tika means a gloss, simple explanatory notes on important ideas of the Bhashya. So, during this time, after Shankaracharya is passing away, different types of interpretations of Shankara's philosophy and how we can practice, we can realize those ideas developed among the Vedantic scholars. There were two fundamental schools. One is Vivarana Prasthana, the other is Bhamadi Prasthana. There is another school which also developed, it's called Vartika Prasthana, which actually got merged with Vivarana Prasthana. That's why I don't want to include it as a separate school. One school, one approach, one method of analyzing Vedantic teachings, which follows the tradition of Padmapadacharya, one of Shankaracharya's disciples, is called Vivarana Prasthana. It got the name Vivarana Prasthana because one great scholar who appeared in Padmapada's tradition, Prakashatmayeti, he wrote a well-known book called Panchapadika Vivarana. Panchapadika is the name of a text, it's a commentary by Padmapada on Shankaracharya's commentary in Brahma Sutras, and this was a further elaborated and commented upon by Prakashatmayeti, and the name of this book is called Panchapadika Vivarana. Another school was Bhamadi Prasthana. It got the name Bhamadi because that was the name of the title of the book, of a commentary on Shankaracharya's own commentary on Brahma Sutras, written by Vajaspati Misra, and the name of the book is Bhamadi Tika. And another approach which got merged with Vivarana Prasthana in many respects was the tradition of Sureshwaracharya, who wrote a well-known book, that is Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, Bhashya Vartikam, and a few other important books he wrote. Now, according to one school, one of these schools, that is, according to Vivarana school, if you listen to a great statement in Vedanta, that immediately becomes your experience. This may strike us something interesting. How can a statement immediately give you the experience? It's called Sabda Aparokshavaja. What it says is, suppose a person, a spiritual aspirant, has practiced a lot of meditation, lot of spiritual sadhanas in his whole life, and his mind is ready, so completely ready, prepared for the highest spiritual idea, spiritual experience. And if a teacher gives him this Tattwamasi Mahavakya instruction, immediately that student will experience Aham Brahmasmi Anubhuti without any further spiritual practice. These ideas are found in Shankaracharya's own Mandukya Karika Bhashya, which of course we will take up later. So the point is, now I can give an example. Suppose one of you are driving every day between San Francisco and Sacramento. hardly about 100 miles. Every day you drive. In the morning you go there, evening you come. You drive for several years. If somebody tells you something about a place, a signboard, or a big shop, or a small town in between, immediately you will understand, because you are driving between these two cities every day, let's say for 30 or 40 years. You don't need a Google map, you don't need any other source of information to really locate and to remember what he's talking about, or the town or the shop, because you yourself have seen the shop for many, many years while driving every day, morning and evening. Now, like that, if a spiritual seeker is fully established in all these 7 qualifications that I outlined at the beginning of this class, sadhana chatushtraya and sravana manana nididhyasana, then if he is fully established in that, then one instruction is enough for him to experience the essence of the instruction. That's the idea behind. To give an example, Sri Ramakrishna's, Swami Vivekananda's Guru, Sri Ramakrishna. Sri Ramakrishna was practicing spiritual sadhanas all his life, right from his birth. Right from his birth. Even as a little boy of 5 years, he had some higher mystical samadhi experience. And all his life was meditating, praying. He was in constant communion with God, Divine Mother, all the time, all his life. And then Totapuri, a great teacher who belongs to the Puri Sampradaya, Puri tradition of Shankaracharya's tradition, he came to the Dakshineshwar temple and instructed Sri Ramakrishna, gave this instruction of Mahavakya. Immediately Sri Ramakrishna got that experience. He emerged into Samadhi. He sat there for 3 days in Samadhi. Why? Because what the instruction that he received, he was more than prepared for that. It is something like telling, suppose you have already got a PhD, and if you are going to sit in a graduation class, you won't require much time to understand what the teacher is explaining to you. If you already have a post-graduation or PhD, then you go to a graduation class, you don't require any elaborate instruction to understand what you are being taught. It is called Shabda Parokshoda, which means if a person gets Shabda, if he instruction, immediately it becomes real experience for him. But this is one view. The other view is different. It is called Prasankhyanavada. This view was propounded by another Vedantic movement. It is called Bhamati Prasthana, which actually follows the tradition of Vajaspati Mishra. It says, you listen to an instruction, that is not enough. Then you have to constantly think about the meaning, because you are not ready for it. That is true for most of the 99%, more than 99% of the population of spiritual seekers. One instruction will not work and will never work. What works for a Shankaracharya or a Sri Ramakrishna may not work for us. I know that in modern times it is difficult for people to accept that we are inferior to Buddha. Nobody will be happy if I tell you that you are not as great as Buddha. Everyone wants to be this egalitarian democratic society, we are all equals. But in spiritual life, it is not a matter of what we want or what we choose. It's a matter of where we stand. It's a matter of our own evolution. Then you can find in Buddha. You read Buddha's these rebirth stories, Jataka tales. So many times something happened, some disciple came to him, and some disciples created some problems. Then Buddha immediately begins a story. And then he tells, in that previous life, you were doing that, and I was doing this. So you can find. And the whole problem is solved. Immediately the disciple is fully satisfied. So unless we believe in the doctrine of reincarnation or rebirth. And of course, in the doctrine of law of karma, you will not be able to clearly understand what I am explaining now. So what it means is, for normal spiritual seekers, every spiritual practice begins as an idea, as a concept, as a wonderful idea. That's all. And then the idea goes down deeper and deeper. And still again there is a lot of conflict, because other ideas, opposite ideas are trying to dominate. See, when we go to a library, you want to read Bhagavad Gita, but mind, I will read something more sensational, because mind is not happy. Mind feels every minute is like a whole day when you read the Gita. But if you read some thriller, some let us say story, something sensational things, then 1 hour is like 1 minute, because our mind is not ready for it. So frequently at the beginning there will be a lot of conflict between what we want to do and what our mind permits us to do. Whatever we want, our mind doesn't permit us to do. If mind could always cooperate with what we want to do, then there will be no problem in this world. So according to the Prasankhya school, immediate experience doesn't follow instruction. You have to listen to a teacher, you have to read a book, understand properly, and then slowly get fully established in that idea. And then you should also practice some karma yoga, prayer, or reading holy books. Slowly you should enrich your mind with more and more spiritual ideas. And we should slowly elevate our mind to a higher level of preparedness. It may take several life cycles. Any doubt, you can read Buddha's Jataka tales. It may take several life cycles. But it's not a delay. Because in spiritual life, whatever you do, you never lose that. Money you may lose, bank balance we may lose. But good actions, good thoughts, good words, or any even little bit of spiritual practice, it will create a spiritual bank balance which will never be lost. So we are never late and nothing is lost. That's what Lord Krishna says in the Gita, in the 6th chapter. Arjuna asks one question, puts one question before Krishna. He says, Arjuna asks Krishna, now look here, I've been listening to you, but suppose I make a mistake, what will happen to me? Partha naiveha namutra vinasas tasya vidyade nahi kalyanakrit kaschid durgadi tata gacchati. This is the reply from Krishna. Lord Krishna tells Arjuna, look here, any person, any even humble practitioner, a beginner in spiritual life, if he has meditated just half an hour every day, 1 minute every day, or maybe just for a few days in his whole life, that spiritual practice will create a spiritual bank balance. And that is yours. When you die, it will follow you. In next life, you will be born with this checkbook of spiritual capital. And you can continue your spiritual journey based on where you stood in the previous life. So whatever we do, whatever little humble spiritual practice we do, it will remain with us. In the Vivekachudamani, there is a beautiful description of our mental constitution. There is a very, very famous, interesting discussion is there. It says, Vagadi pancha, sarvanadi pancha, pranadi pancha, pramukhani pancha, vidyavi kame karmani, puryashtakam sukshma sariramahu. Puryashtakam sukshma sariramahu. So, what is sukshma sarira? What is human constitution? What is our mental constitution? Is clearly explained in the Bhagavad Gita itself. Sorry, in the Vivekachudamani itself. Okay, Bhagavad Gita also tells many times. Lord Krishna says, Purabhyasena tenaiva hridevi apashopi saka jignasiravi yogasya sabda brahmadi vachade. Purabhyasena tenaiva. On the strength of what you have done, what spiritual practices you have already performed in your previous life, you will continue your spiritual journey. Avasya means you are helpless. If you have done something good in your previous life, you cannot disown it. You are born with it. Hridehi avashopisa means you are helpless. Suppose you have done a lot of spiritual practice in your previous life. You want to be Batman, you cannot. Because the spiritual bank balance you have created will force you in the right direction, even if you want to be otherwise. That's what Gita says. So in the Vivekachudamani, there is a great description, a wonderful description of the mental system, what we call a real human personality. What is that? Vagadi pancha, Sravanadi pancha, Pranadi pancha, Pramukhani pancha. Buddhya vidya vidya kama karmani. Puryashtakam sukshma sariramahu. Puryashtakam means, let us say 8 cities or 8 units, 8 structures. That is 5 made up of speech, 5 made up of hearing, 5 made of breath, and 5 subtle elements. Then buddhi, mana, chittam and ahankara. Then superimposition avidya, kama, karma. I shall try to explain this. Actually, if you want to know what we are, why we do what we do, why we are not able to do what we want to do. Often there is a conflict between what we want to do and what we end up doing. This particular verse, if you are interested, you can see it is 98th verse, which actually gives a wonderful description of our mental constitution, our real personality. You know, the body structure is only a very insignificant aspect of our real personality. Our real personality is actually what is behind this body. Our thoughts and ideas, that's what we are remembered for after this body is gone. So, if we remember Gandhi, for example, Gandhi certainly was not a very remarkable looking person, but Gandhi was a great man. There are wonderful people who may look slightly better than Gandhi physically, but Gandhi is so much remembered. Or Lincoln, for example. There are many people who may look slightly better than Lincoln, but Lincoln is remembered as a great man more than many others. So the reason is, the real personality is behind and beyond the physical body. What we see with our eyes is only an outer shell. Behind what we see is the real man, the real personality. And it is said, the aggregate of these 8, that is Jnanendriyas, Karmendriyas, then Pancha Pranas, then Pancha Mahabhutas, then 4 aspects of Antakarana, Mana, Buddhi, Ahankara, and Avidya, Kama, Karma. We will explain this in the coming session. So what it means is, how we bring with us a bank balance from previous life. Not material bank balance, but a spiritual bank balance. You may have found people with a natural instinct for certain skills, certain ideas. It may be for spiritual life, it may be for music, it may be for art, it may be unfortunately for doing something nasty also. You find. Both you find. The good and bad find. Why? Because they are being born with a baggage. And they cannot throw away that. They are born with it. So, how this happens, how this transmigratory cycle continues, how we are born from life to life carrying this baggage. And how actually we can throw away this baggage if we want. The only way to throw away this baggage that we are carrying from life to life is to practice these 7 disciplines that we already disciplined. You can find Vivekachudamani unfolds this wonderful plan to throw away the baggage that we are born with, especially the undesirable baggage, the heavy burden that we are born with. Maybe some we call karmic blocks, negative instincts that we want to get rid of, but not able to. How to get rid of that? Vivekachudamani explains further. You can also listen to the Yoga Sutra classes, which in which some of these ideas are explained from a different perspective. You can see in our website and our YouTube the Yoga Sutra classes. Okay, thank you. Now, before I conclude, I want to make an announcement. That is, there will be no class on this subject till August 21st, because I will be traveling abroad. So I will not be in station. So there will be no class on Sundays from July 17th onwards. That means the next class on this subject, that is the foundational text of Indian philosophy, will be on Sunday, August 21st, 6 p.m. Please remember. So after this, there will be no class next week. I won't be at the station. So the next class will be August 21st, 6 p.m. Please remember. Now we are open for discussion. Most welcome.
Namaskar, Shriram, you're first.
Yeah.
Just a clarification.
Yeah.
So by chit we mean consciousness, but chitta is mind stuff or is memory, or how do we translate chitta?
Yeah. No, the chit is different from chitta.
Right.
Chit is consciousness. Chideva rasam. Chit eva. Consciousness itself. Chittam is actually a repository of our memories. Of course we'll discuss this. One important component of our subtle personality or real personality is a quadrant. Means it has 4 components. One is mana, then buddhi, then chitta and ahankara. Yeah, mind is the speculative faculty. Suppose you are seeing an object in front of you, you are not sure what it is. So mind goes on speculating whether it is this or that and so on. It is mind. When you actually decide it is this, after some time you decide it is buddhi, intellect. Nisyatmika antakarnavati buddhi. Sankalpa vikalpatmika antakarnavati mana. And then, ahankara is something. Well, I have seen this object last week. Because you identify yourself as the one who saw this object last week. But remember, the basis for this remembrance is there is a memory that is lying somewhere in your mental system. So that component of the mental system, where memories are accumulated and deposited, is a repository of memory, is called chittam. Chittam is different from chit. Chit is consciousness. Chit is knowledge. It is consciousness, it is awareness. Chittam is just the memory system. That's an important thing. It is actually.
Only one clarification.
Yeah.
In the Samadhi Shakti Sampati we have Samadhan.
Yeah.
That is translated as Chitta Ekagrata.
Yeah.
But in English we say it is mental focus, one-pointedness of the mind or of the Chitta, of the memory bank.
Yeah, there you can really focus on something only if a memory system cooperates with you. Concentration is not possible when there is conflict within mind. And conflict is based on conflict. The root cause of conflict is conflicting memories. You remember something, you remember its opposite. And many things you remember. That creates conflict. So this distraction is gone. So you are able to focus on something. That's called samadhana. Actually, this samadhanam can also mean peace, serenity. That's why, when more than one ideas come into conflict, serenity, concentration and peace of mind will be disturbed. We enjoy peace of mind only when there is a continuous flow of the same mental thought currents. It's one of the Samadhi, Shakka, Sampatti, the third component of Sadhana Chatushtaya.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you.
Yogi, your hand was up next.
Yeah.
Pranam, Maharaj.
Yeah, namaskar.
In the Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasanam, for Nididhyasanam you mentioned the definition is Vijatiya Pratyaya Anantarita Sajatiya Pratyaya.
I shall mention Vijadiya Pratyaya Tiraskarena. Tiraskara means rejection, getting rid of. Vijadiya means Viparita Jadiya, means different, distinct, opposite, conflicting thought currents. Pratyaya actually here means ideation. It comes in the form of memories, conflicts. So when there is a continuous flow of opposite ideas, opposite memories, blocking your attempt to focus on, let us say, one auspicious statement from the Gita, Upanishad, or any book, for any sacred book that you consider sacred, immediately there is a conflicting thought current that blocks you. That is Vijadiya Pratyaya. Tiraskara means getting rid of, rejection. And when after or by getting rid of negative thought currents, what do you do? Sajadiya Pratyaya Pravahikarana. Pravahikarana means making a flow. So you should have a continuous, spontaneous flow, a harmonious flow of positive thought currents.
This sounds very similar to the Patanjali Yoga Sutras in the Vibhuti-pada, Tasya Prashantavahita Samskara.
Yeah.
So that tranquil samskaras, continuous flow of tranquility, that follows on, that sutra follows after Nirbija Samadhi, Tasya, after Nirbija Samadhi.
Yeah.
So are we talking about achieving Nirbija Samadhi in this part, Nididhyasanam?
Now Nididhyasanam is it is a Vedantic approach, So how if you do a juxtaposition of Nirbija Samadhi, Nididhyasanam, perhaps you may be off the mark, because you can say all Samadhi experiences of yoga tradition can be compared to Nididhyasanam. Samadhi, the yoga Samadhi can only make you fit, completely, absolutely fit for higher progress. It is not the goal. It is only let us say all Samadhi, the Bija Samadhi also can be compared to the Nididhyasanam, which has reached the highest level. That's all. That's an important thing. Nididhyasanam can be compared with some different forms of Samadhi Yoga Sutras. In Advaitins do not accept the Yoga Samadhi experience as aparokshanubhuti. That's a different thing, because in yoga there is always this duality, plurality continuing, because it is so many purushas, Purusha. So yoga is a dualistic system. So it helps you to reach a very high level of spiritual fitness for getting jnana prapti or realization. But it is not realization itself. So we can say it may not be wrong to equate Nirbija Samadhi with Nididhyasanam in its highest level. That's true.
So we are at least looking at the comparable achievement of concentration in the Nididhyasanam.
Yeah. Nididhyasanam for a beginner, it can be compared with Sabija Samadhi or just before that. But nidhyasana in its most advanced state can be compared to nirbija samadhi. Because in nirbija there is no focus, there is no object. In this nidhyasana, the highest level, when all negative thought currents are completely rejected, when positive thought currents are identified, then there will be no focus. So that is roughly the same as nirbija samadhi. And all seeds of again going back to the previous levels is completely blocked. So it becomes nirbija. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Maharaj, there's a YouTuber question from Christian. How can we use mind to go beyond mind?
Yeah, mind can be used to go beyond mind, So actually, mind itself, as we understand in Vedanta, mind is just a state of vrittis, memories, awareness, functioning as speculation. When you speculate, you have got different options in your mind. That is sankalpa vikalpatmika antakarana vritti. When a particular vritti or mental impression, we call it this vritti, sometimes called wave, but wave, it can be called wave in a way, like a waves of an ocean, moving or functioning in a particular manner. So when it's functioning as speculation, it's called mind. When it's functioning as a decision-making faculty, it's called buddhi or intellect. Now, a person, a spiritual seeker, first, he turns his attention inward. And when his mind becomes calm and quiet and still, it is not mind. Mind can be called mind only when it is disturbed. It is functioning as a speculative faculty. If you have no conflict, actually it means, suppose you claim you have absolutely no conflict, you have gone beyond mind. So long as you are identifying yourself with the mind, you cannot be free from conflicts. That's the fact. And that mind identifies itself with Atman. It's important thing. When mind identifies itself with Atman, then it ceases to be the mind. It is no more the mind. Going beyond mind is nothing. It is an ornamental word. In modern times, when you give lectures, you need some masala. Masala means spices. Those of you don't know. You need trader juice, cereal advertisement. You need something. But really speaking, there are some books for you. You can read Drik Drishya Viveka, or you can read some, maybe translations may be available of Yoga Vasishtha, Ashtavakra Gita. There are some important books. Even with the teaching of Ramana Maharshi is another. Ramana Maharshi takes many of these ideas directly from Shankara's commentary. Many of Ramana Maharshi's ideas can be called in Shankaracharya's. He was a great follower of Shankaracharya. It's an important thing. So what it means, going beyond mind means you are identifying yourself with Atman, which means mind no longer functions for you. That's an important thing. Mind functions only so long as you have conflicts, thought currents, memories, impressions. You are speculating this and that. The moment you are totally being established, there is no more mind for you, actually. You are identifying yourself with Atman. That's the idea behind.
Very good, Maharaj.
Yeah.
Mark, I know you've been on the move, but are you ready to ask your question?
Pranam, Maharaj.
Yeah.
My question is,
Namaskar.
Namaskar. What steps or practices should a student of Vedanta take to lessen his or her attachment with the body?
Yeah. One, of course, the first step is to try to read books that tell you this body is not everything. Any book, any idea that reminds you that you are not this body. There's something beyond this body. It will be helpful. It's an important thing. And then, of course, doing some karma yoga. In that respect, Yoga Sutras and Vedanta agree on one point. Yoga Sutra calls it Kriya Yoga. Tapaswadhyaya Ishara Pranidhananani Kriya Yoga. The first sutra of Sadhana Pada. The same thing is got actually, according to Vajaspati and other commentators of Yoga Sutras, Kriya Yoga includes Bhakti Yoga and Karma Yoga both. So any kind of endeavor, effort, even physical effort, some physical work without any selfish motive, any noble physical work will generate a spiritual benefit. You can easily see, suppose you're walking in the street and you find if somebody, let's say blind man, you help that man to cross the street. That evening, you may, I have done something sensible. Know why? It is in your own private world, in your own mental world, you enjoy, you get this contentment, you have done something sensible. So every unselfish, noble act, physical act, even physical act, physical, mental, intellectual, verbal, anything, it will produce a spiritual bank balance in our mind. So that will help us to slowly start our ascent to higher levels of identification. That's the beginning of our spiritual journey. Any noble, unselfish act, physical, mental or intellectual, plus getting ourselves familiar with these ideas, feeding our mind with good spiritual food. That's one thing. Especially we should try to focus on ideas that remind us about what our body really is. Every doctor knows. Every doctor knows what the body contains. Doctors do not necessarily become spiritual teachers. Of course, there are many doctors who are great spiritual teachers. Absolutely, no doubt about it. Not everyone. Why? So our intellectual awareness of what our body is may not help us to get rid of physical identity, identity with the physical body. It doesn't happen. Our intellectual knowledge doesn't translate into real help to mind. It doesn't help the mind all the time. We do many things not because we are not aware of the fact that we should not do that, because our mind cannot desist from doing that. That's the problem. So the only way out is to accumulate a lot of spiritual samskaras, but doing good things, speaking good things, feeding the mind with good spiritual food. That's the only way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
There are 3 more questions on the Zoom from David and Shay and Badri. So David, you're first.
Yeah.
Swami,
Yeah.
thank you for the talk. It was very elucidating. I just, my question actually is not about Vedanta. I just wanted to be sure about the schedule. I noticed on the website it said there would be this class next Sunday and the Sunday after. But what you're saying is the new schedule is we'll miss 5 Sundays and it will start again on August 21st?
Yeah. That's true. Because we were planning to, we're planning to continue this, but during the summer recess frequently I have many other engagements. This comes naturally. So this is the only time when I can take. Okay. But
Okay.
we will correct information on our website homepage. We'll do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for
so
reminding. Thank you for reminding this very important, valuable information. Thank you for reminding. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks, David. Shay, you're next.
Yeah.
Hello. Thank you for the talk.
Thank you.
I'm trying to understand how samadhi is different from experiencing identity with Brahman. Can you describe that a little bit more?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, in yoga philosophy and yoga sutras, generally speaking, they believe in two fundamental eternal categories, permanent categories. One is Purusha and Prakriti. The whole yoga process is meant to get back to our Purusha identity by discerning our Prakriti identity. Because body, mind, intellect, thoughts, ahankara, all these are different evolutions of Prakriti in Sankhya philosophy. So Sankhya system is essentially dualistic. Vedanta that we are discussing now is non-dualistic. So in Vedanta, when we experience, when you reach the highest Advaitic experience, we look upon everything as manifestation of the same. Just like the waves, the drops, the foams, all these are non-distinct and non-different from the ocean. But for some time we may think, wrongly of course, the waves are very tall, tsunami 30 feet, 40 feet, 30 meters. You cannot say it is the ocean because ocean is far away. But tsunami has already entered the land, you cannot. But we know that it's the same ocean, really speaking. Now the point is, this is the Advaitic view, Vedantic view. In Sankhya system, it's a permanent dualism. Once you identify yourself the Purusha, Prakriti continues its play elsewhere. And not only that, every single person is a Purusha. It is called, so it is a pluralistic system. But Vedantics believe that the same Atman manifests in these 8 billion people in this, let's say the 8 billion people inhabiting this earth. 8 billion jivas, what we call individual souls, which means 8 billion body, minds, complex systems. Or the same Atman is manifesting in these 8 billion human body systems. 8 billion samskaras, 8 billion units of human personalities. But these are all samskaras, vasanas, vrittis, impressions only. When they realize their true identity, they will understand this body-mind complex differs, but the indweller, the inner resident, the Atman, is the same. When you reach that stage, you continue to be living in this world, but you will be seeing only the absolute reality. Let's say a goldsmith may value different golden ornaments only on the basis of the quality of the gold. So he looks at the gold only, not the workmanship, other things may be material. Like a pot maker, you have, let's say, 1,000 different utensils made of the same clay, pots and pans and glasses and cups and so on. But a pot maker, everything is clay only or mud only, nothing else. But when you drink the water, you use a cup. When you store water, you use a jar perhaps or a bigger vessel. But for the pot maker, it is the same clay. Advaita approach is the approach of the pot maker, the goldsmith. He doesn't care for whether the gold is converted into a necklace, a ring or whatever else. He doesn't bother. For he knows he will melt it and he will judge the quality of the gold. That's what he looks at. Pot maker, he doesn't bother. He knows everything, whether it's cup or glass or jar, it's only clay. So Advaita is like a pot maker looking at everything as different manifestations of clay. Now Sankhya believes that a pot has one shape. So it is different from, let us say, a cup which is another shape, or a jar which is different shape. So that's the difference. Okay, it's clear.
Only follow-up is that you've mentioned that, and I've heard from others that most followers of the yoga system no longer subscribe to the dualism, right? Many of them became Vedantins, right? So
that's true.
If someone follows the yoga system,
Yeah.
but they really are a Vedantin, when they experience samadhi, is that the same as
you are right. Yeah. Yoga can be called a springboard to Vedanta. You can see the great, in fact, the popularization of yoga, Hatha Yoga, physical yoga actually, it began with Swami Sivananda of Rishikesh, Divine Life Society founder. Yoga as an idea, as a concept, was brought to Western world by Swami Vivekananda, maybe 30 years, 40 years before. So you can see, but Swami Sivananda was a monk of the Shankaracharya order, Saraswati, Sivananda Saraswati. Saraswati is one of the 10 monastic orders that Shankaracharya founded. They were all Advaitins, or Swami Krishnananda, Swami Chidananda, the same tradition. They were teaching, they were continuing the tradition of Sivananda of Rishikesh. But they were all actually, they were teaching, preaching only Advaita. So you can see. So that is, you are right. You are right. Actually, when a person practices meditation or spiritual practices, some kind of samadhi, he will automatically, naturally will think, well, what is behind, what is the one supreme reality behind everything? Nobody can really be eternally satisfied with eternal dualism. Impossible. In fact, that is what is happening even in Christianity. In Western world, the great intellectuals of late 18th century, the late 18th century, the entire 19th century, the great Indologists and great thinkers, Schopenhauer is just one of them. When they just read some Upanishads, sometimes very inaccurate translations, still something struck them, really speaking. Charles Wilkins' translation of Gita is a very primary book, but it struck a fire in the heart of Emerson. And you find in Emerson a lot of Advaita, even Thoreau, most unlikely person. A lot of Advaita you find. So a search for some fundamental unifying or unitary principle. That is natural for every genuine spiritual seeker. It's an important thing to remember. Okay. Thank you for the question. So thank you for this question. I have one important announcement for everyone. That is, we have Guru Purnima celebration on Saturday, July 16th at 10 a.m. You know, Guru Purnima, the exact date is 13th, but we have a public celebration on 16th July, Saturday, from 10 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. There will be a talk. We are also celebrating the 125th anniversary of the Foundation of Ramakrishna Mission on the same day. Those of you who are in this area, you are most welcome to come to 2323 Veliover Street, San Francisco, Vedanta Society, Northern California, 2323 Veliover Street, San Francisco. Most welcome. Thank you.
Maharaj,
yeah.
Maharaj, I'm just going to ask Badri to email the question because apparently we're out of time. So if you have a question that we didn't get to, I recommend you email Swamiji Tatwa at sfvedanta.org and he'll receive your question that way because we're out of time. Maharaj, I want to thank you so much on my behalf and on behalf of all the grateful students and wish you good travels.
So thank you everyone. So next class will be August 21st and I all of you happy summer. The good summer, the good time for you to relax. Okay, thank you. Namaskar. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.
Namaskar.
Namaskar.
Recording stopped.
Namaskar.
Have a good travel.
Thank you. Namaskar. Everyone.
Swamiji.
Namaskar. Namaskar.
Namaskar.
Namaskar.